Armen, Levack, ESPN Radio 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com, and of course, bring us with you with Radio Pup. Download that at the Smart Store. Our MMA insider, Richard Hunter. Follow him on Twitter, at Richard Hunter. Richard, here's the deal. I'm dying to see Aldo McGregor square off in the octagon, make it happen in a whole nine. Then I'm hearing that there's rib issues with Aldo, and the fight might not happen. Then it is, and it is, and it is, it isn't. What's going on?
Okay, so, Jeff, here's what happened. Report coming out of Aldo's native Brazil a couple of days ago said that he had been injured in training. He had a rib injury. It wasn't known at the time if the rib was broken or it was a fracture, but that clearly his involvement in the UFC 189 pay-per-view could be in jeopardy. Now, why is that such a big deal? Because, Jeff, the UFC has spent a record amount of money. The UFC has invested an amazing amount of money into making this fight happen. That means a couple of days ago, all of a sudden, the main event that people have been looking forward to more than any other fight this year could be in jeopardy, and the UFC says, even though they certainly, as a first choice, would want to have McGregor face Aldo, particularly because of all the animosity that is built up, their next main objective was to keep Conor McGregor on that card at all costs because, Jeff, right, Irish fans travel over across the ocean to attend Conor McGregor's fights in droves. When Conor McGregor competed against Dustin Poirier this past September at UFC 178 in Las Vegas, 10% of the people in attendance were Irish citizens who had traveled overseas to see the fight. 10% of the people. So the UFC does not want to disappoint those fans who they know are going to be in attendance in even greater numbers this time around. So here's what they've done. They have contacted Chad Money Mendez, and they've told Mendez, if it turns out that Jose Aldo, if he cannot compete, then Chad Mendez is on standby. He will step in, and he and McGregor will fight for an interim title. So no matter what happens, Conor McGregor is in that main event, and he is fighting for a featherweight title, albeit the possibility of an interim featherweight title if Chad Mendez is the last-minute replacement opponent. But I'll tell you this, Jeff, believe it or not, the style matchup of Conor McGregor and Chad Mendez may even be more compelling and harder to predict than if Conor McGregor had fought Jose Aldo.
See, our listeners will remember Conor McGregor because during our Super Bowl trip, Armen fell in love with him literally. Like said, he doesn't swing that way, but if he did, he would call Conor.
Wow. Well, that's got to be troubling news to Armen's wife.
Yeah.
But on the upside, we are celebrating a same-sex marriage Supreme Court decision today. So if things don't work out with Armen and Mrs. Armen, maybe somewhere down the line. Secretly,
he's very excited today. Richard, the thing that I'm hearing a lot of is a lot of people are thinking that Jose Aldo just pulls out of fights. This would be, if he doesn't fight, this will be the fifth time he's pulled out of a fight.
Yeah, Jose Aldo has been plagued with injury throughout his career, and that makes him a bit of an enigma. On the one hand, as I said earlier, he's the only featherweight champion the UFC has ever known. When they established that weight division, he was the champion, and he's never relinquished the belt. He's undefeated in UFC competition, and he's rarely ever challenged. That being said, he has dealt with injuries, and that has had him fighting infrequently at times. And if this turns out to be something that's going to prevent him from facing Conor McGregor in a couple of weeks, and it will not only be the latest in that string of injuries, but it will certainly be by a long shot the most high profile scenario that it's ever occurred in.
Richard Hunter, you can follow him on Twitter at Richard Hunter. He's our MMA guy, and he just knows it all. Armen Levack, ESPN Radio 104.5 The Team. Now, as excited as the Capital Region has become about mixed martial arts, as much as we all love the UFC, it's becoming less and less likely that we will see them in our hometown anytime soon.
Yeah, at least this year. And New York State has had a really strange evolution, or in some cases lack thereof, in terms of getting it legalized in New York State. Now, so just about every state has gotten on board. The big notable exception has been your home state of New York, for obvious reasons. You'd like to have a UFC card there at Madison Square Garden, the way that we've seen so many landmark boxing matches. take place there over the years. Now, your former Assembly Speaker, Sheldon Silver, was the biggest opponent to this over the years. He had strong ties to the Culinary Union. What do they have to do with this? Well, the Fertitta Station casinos here in Las Vegas are not unionized. The Culinary Union does not like that. And so they have worked behind the scenes to lobby politicians to keep MMA from being legalized in the state of New York as a way to get back at the Fertittas.
Wow.
Sheldon Silver, until he had to step down very recently, was the biggest opponent. And because he was the Assembly Speaker, he was keeping the vote from coming to the floor. Now, once he had to step down, it was believed by the UFC and MMA proponents that this would be the year that things changed, and the UFC even reserved a date for Madison Square Garden late in the year. But today, unfortunately for mixed martial arts fans in the state of New York, we get the news that the new Assembly Speaker there in Albany, Carl Heastie, has done the same thing that Silver did for the past 7 years, and he has blocked the vote from going to the floor. So it may still happen at some point in the future, but mixed martial arts is not going to be legalized in the state of New York this year.
The fight to get the fight. I can't talk to you, Richard Hunter, without asking any word on John Bones Jones. Do we know anything new about him?
No. It's a holding pattern right now. The wheels of justice turn very slowly. Who knows how long that's going to take with hearings and continuances. You know how all that goes, appeals if necessary. So I think at this point it's more a question of, if we will see John Jones ever re-enter the UFC octagon as opposed to when.
Wow, he's Richard Hunter. He is money. If you want to know about MMA, follow him on Twitter at Richard Hunter. Thank you so much for making some time today, Mr. Hunter.
Thank you for having me, Jeff, and congratulations to Armen and the new addition to his family.